Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is battle. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear battle used is to mean to fight, to achieve, or resist something. Many times we use this particular verb to describe wars and other armed conflicts. So, this first definition very much connects to that idea. A second way you might hear battle used is to mean to engage in a struggle, argument, or dispute with someone. So, as you hear this verb, don't always think of war or militaries. Sometimes we describe our interpersonal conflicts or struggles as also requiring us to fight or battle. You should know that battle is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, you should drop the E and then add ing to form battling. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. The base verb, battle, ends in an L sound, which is voiced. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. There won't be an extra syllable. It should sound like this: battled, battled. Now, let's take a moment to look at some phrasal verbs that use the verb battle. The first is battle against. This can have a couple different meanings. One is to mean to try and overcome some sort of issue, illness, or some type of problem. An example of this might be, he's been battling against cancer for 2 years. So again, this would tie to the part of the definition referencing an illness. A second way you might hear battle against used is to mean to compete against an opponent. So sometimes this gets used in connection with sports or other activities that have sort of a competition element to them. Let's look at another example. The two teams will battle against one another for the championship next week. Okay? So again, clearly this is not an armed conflict, it's a competition. The next phrasal verb is battle for. This means to fight to win control of something. An example of that might be, the military has been battling for control of the territory. So again, with this particular definition, you might see many references to it in history, or even if you're studying political science as well. The last phrasal verb that we're going to look at is battle out. This phrasal verb should be separated. So there's going to be an object that comes between the verb battle and the preposition out. The meaning for this is to struggle very intensely against someone or something. And the struggle is in order to achieve some sort of result. Let's look at an example. Senate Republicans and Democrats have battled an infrastructure bill out. So, if you follow politics, particularly in the United States, you have likely read that our two major parties have been having these discussions about how we should update the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, etc., here in the United States. And the two parties have very different ideas on how that gets accomplished. So there has been this struggle in order to achieve the result of having a plan to update our infrastructure. Now, let's spend a little more time looking at our verb of the day, battle, in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the past progressive or the past continuous and the simple future using be going to. Let's start with the past progressive. We use this verb tense to describe an action that was in progress when it was interrupted by another action. The interrupting action is going to be in the simple past tense. To make the past progressive, you need to use the past form of be, so that's was or were, and then we're going to use the ing form of the verb. Let's look at an affirmative example or positive example. The firefighters were battling a house fire when they received a call about an even larger industrial fire. Okay, so let's talk about what that sentence is communicating. So we have were battling. That action was in progress when it was interrupted with the action of receiving another call about a different fire. So notice the verb receive is in the past tense there. We can see received, and that's what's very common to see with the past progressive. Now, if you want to make a negative past progressive sentence, use not after our past form of be. You can see that in our example here. The army wasn't battling on two fronts at that time. So we can see was not, and then our ing form of the verb again. Okay. If you want to ask a yes or no question in the past progressive, again, start with our form of be, so was or were, whichever form matches the subject, and the subject should come next, and then the progressive form of the verb, the ing form. An example of this, was she battling COVID-19 when she passed away? So again, that idea of sort of fighting an illness, fighting a virus in this case. Now let's take a look at the simple future. Today we're going to focus on using be going to, and the only tricky thing about be going to is remembering our present forms of be. So we have three forms of be in the present. That's am, is, and are. I matches with am, he, she, it with is, and you, we, they with are. And then after that, we're going to follow the same structure. So we have our form of be, going to, and then the base verb. Let's look at an affirmative example. The two companies are going to battle in a courtroom over the contract dispute. So again, this idea of they're going to have a disagreement, a dispute of some kind. Now, if you want to make a negative simple future sentence, just insert not after our be verb. You can make contractions with is not. You can make that into isn't, or are not. That becomes aren't. But there isn't a contraction form for am not. Let's look at another example. The politician isn't going to battle for corporate interests. So this is a sentiment I've heard many politicians share. I'm fighting for the working person, not big corporations. And that's essentially what that means. So battle for, fight for are frequently used and have the same meaning. Lastly, let's look at making a simple future yes or no question using be going to. To do this, we'll start with our present form of be, whichever form matches our subject, the subject comes next, and then going to and the base verb. Are the athletes going to battle it out tomorrow? Okay. Now let's just spend a little bit of time looking at some related words and phrases. The first word we're going to look at has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. It's battle. The noun, just like our verb, can have a couple different meanings. One meaning is a sustained fight between large, organized, armed forces. So again, this particular definition, think of wars, conflicts with militaries, etc. Here's an example of this noun in a sentence. The Battle of Gettysburg had the largest number of casualties during the U.S. Civil War. Sometimes, if you study history, you'll see this particular noun used to note particular conflicts that might have lasted days, a day, or hours even, weeks or months. The second way you might hear the noun battle used is to mean an extended contest or struggle to succeed or survive. So again, this particular definition, not connected to war. These ideas might connect back to kind of those ideas of fights, struggles, etc. Another example of this, he's been fighting a battle against ALS for 3 years. If you're not familiar with that, that is a nervous system disease, so it affects people's ability to walk, move, talk, etc. It affects our spinal cord and brain. The last thing we're going to look at today is the phrase half the battle. This particular phrase is used to describe something that is a key part of a larger goal or task or project. An example of this: some days getting out of bed is half the battle for students. This is a sentence I've heard describe a lot of college students and the challenges they face as they go off to school, get a little taste of independence, and sometimes struggle to keep up with their schoolwork. So if you can just get out of bed and get to your classes, many say that's a huge part of being successful in school, which would be the larger goal or the larger task. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.